Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the End of Mind podcast. I'm your host, Caitlin. This recording's been a long time coming. Thank you so much for being here, Anna.
Thanks so much for having me.
I cannot wait for you to just share with our listeners a little bit more about yourself, what you do, tell us what's happening. I feel like you've been everywhere, all over social media. So give us the quick update.
Sure. First of all, thank you so much for having me on this podcast. I'm so happy to be here. So I'm a workplace dynamics strategist. I'm a fractional chief culture officer, a leadership coach, and my favorite part of my job is I'm a professional speaker as well. I speak to high schools, colleges, Fortune 500 organizations, as well as small to medium-sized businesses. I've spoken to all three local chamber audiences, Chester County, Delaware County, mainline society professional women. And I genuinely love to help make a positive impact on people so that they can have a better work life and even personal life too. I use a lot of my failures and struggles as key lessons learned that I love to share. But the biggest thing that I love to help individuals with is becoming indispensable within their professional society. That doesn't mean being a people pleaser and being an overworker and doing all the things and just being reactive. Being indispensable means being the trusted, respected, and dependable person within a team or organization. It means that when you leave to go for another job, your team wants to leave with you. It means you're the person that everyone loves to work with because we all know what it's like to work with someone we can't effing stand. So teaching indispensability is really my bread and butter, and it applies for early career individual contributors to mid-career senior executives. Um, Q1 this year, I was fortunate enough to have 12 speaking engagements. I'm going to New York City this Thursday for a keynote. I'm speaking to a youth leadership at Chester County next month. So there's a lot still in the works. I have talks booked up until the fall. But yeah, I'm really proud to be here and excited to share more about my story.
We're so happy to have you. I mean, we are so aligned in so many ways of how we think about leadership. And throughout this show, I've had it now. This is our fifth year of the end in mind. So it's just so crazy the evolution that this show has seen of myself, as stepping into this CEO role, leading a team of 10 people. I realized early on in my company how reactive I was. It wasn't only in work, it was like in my daily, it was so normalized. And it was really hard to change those patterns of behavior. And then once I caught them, I'm like, oh, who would want to be around me anyway? If I'm like a stressful ball of mess all the time, like no wonder why my team was leaving, or I couldn't bring in the people at the level that I needed to. Can you share with us a little bit more about your own experience around that?
First of all, well, you're probably being much harder on yourself than allowed, but I do love anyone that is humble and vulnerable to share their growth. I just turned 40, and something I wish I knew in my 20s, frankly, 30s, maybe 2 years ago, was that going through life reactively and letting your emotions and your mind drive you is not the way to play the game. You have to be as proactive and put your hands on the steering wheel as possible with your thoughts. I can't tell you how many of my coachees or people that I've trained, I mean, professionals that are older than me and have more experience than me, they always talk about being in their heads, and I'm using air
Yeah.
quotes for the listeners. And you can be in your head. That's part of human nature. That's how we are. But you drive what's in your head, or you catch yourself in what's in your head. And that's been like a big aha game changer for me in my life. Speaking of being reactive, Caitlin, I cannot begin to tell you how much I appreciate that, because my rock bottom leadership moment was all around impulse and being reactive. And it was that moment that when I failed tremendously, which I'll share in a moment, I really figured it out and did a 180 and turned it around. I was a younger manager. I was newer into my role at my previous organization. I call it my corporate alma mater. It's a large dermatology group practice that I worked at for 10 years where we had tremendous growth. I was the 11th employee when I left after 10 years. There was 1,200 employees. When I started, we had just opened up our second office. When I left, there was 93. And I'm still in close touch with my CEO and various leaders there. And I was just on with a call with an employee last week. So I'm still very much ingrained and in touch and proud of their continued success. Um, it was really my learning grounds as a manager and as a leader. Let's see, I think I was honestly probably 29 and I was on a high horse. I'm going to be really honest with you. I had this big girl job in New York City. I thought I was hot, you know what? And um, I was given a lot of responsibilities and power, and I was leading very assertively. And I had a very one size fits all approach. I wanted everyone to bust their butt and work hard the way I did. I wanted everyone to have critical thinking, aka common sense, like I did. I wanted everyone to read my lengthy email and just naturally get it. Um, Boy, was I wrong on how humans interact and how everyone's different. Anyhow, we had just had a meeting about cleanliness. Again, this is dermatology group practice, and at a medical setting, cleanliness is extremely important. So we just talked about that. And then I think it was like a Tuesday meeting or something. And then on Friday, I'm doing my thing. I'm in my office, I'm firing off emails, and I walk out. And this was before we even had a corporate office. My office was in the medical office. And I walk out and I see one of the exam rooms and there's a bloody gauze and the room is filthy and it's a mess. And I'm like, WTF, we just had a meeting about cleanliness. So, of course, the sassy Latina millennial in me pulls out my phone and I take a picture of the exam room. Because listen, this is black and white in my head. Like, we just talked about cleanliness, then this room is disgusting. So I went around, I'm like, who just saw a patient in room 7 or whatever room number it was? And they're like, oh, it's so and so. So I walk up to so and so with my ego and my righteousness. And I was like, so and so. And I pull up my phone and I show her, I'm like, did you just see a patient in room 7? Look at it. We just had a meeting about cleanliness. Like, why would you leave it like that? And she was so nervous and shaky. She was very introverted, very intelligent, but on the more reserved social side. And she's like, I'm so sorry. I'm helping Dr. So and so and Dr. So and so. And I thought, oh, dang. Like this girl, because of call out. I'm like, dang, this girl is helping two different doctors. Normally it's one MA, if not two MAs for one doctor. There's one MA for two. I just completely reamed her out in front of the two doctors. And she's busy. So she didn't have time to clean it. She's a good person. She was an incredible employee. And so I made her feel this small. And in turn, I felt so stupid. And so I started backtracking and just said, I'm so sorry. I'll go clean it for you. Sorry about that. Well, I see that you're busy. And I walk out and I'm like, that did not go well. And I'm just like, yikes. So I go and I clean the exam room and then I go out to a lovely little date night with my husband. This was pre-kids and we're in the heart of New York City having a great time. And I get a text message and my face goes white. My husband's like, are you okay? And it said, so and so just quit, no notice because of you. She said she can't work with you anymore. I mean, you can imagine I'm like, great, I'm getting fired. Like totally Monday, I'm gonna go in, pack my bags. This is great. And I just felt so horrible. And I just thought to myself, damn, I was so hard on her. I looked at things very transactionally. I was not thoughtful at all. And I didn't see what was beyond the naked eye. I only saw that bloody gauze and the cleanliness meeting. And that's, I went in on Monday. Luckily, I didn't get fired. But my boss said, listen, this is on you. We're having issues with people not wanting to work with you. Your approach has to change. Something's got to give. and basically in a very nice professional way, like figure it out. Like, you're executing, you're doing great, you're a great value add, but people don't like working with you. You're not good at your job. Was the message I received, not in those words. It was a great, very much kinder than I ever would have imagined conversation. But I honestly did a 180 after that. And I realized everyone's different. Humans are complex. I have to think about how people are going to feel after I speak with them, even if I'm full blown right. I remember even going to my therapist after, and she said, it's more important for you to be cordial than to be right. And I still remember that advice because that at the time was mind blowing to me. And yeah, I turned it around. I was in operations for the first 4 years. And it was to the point where they said, hey, you're so, 2 years later, you're so great with people and you really get along with everyone. We want you to build the HR department, build it from scratch. So, together with the senior leadership team, core values were created, employee engagement programs were created, and I was in charge of executing. And my number one KPI was reducing turnover. We utilized Scaling Up, an amazing book by Vern Harnish, which is popular within growing businesses. And together as a team, we reduced turnover from 60% to 21% in 2 years. We won awards for great places to work in New York City.
Wow.
We had a really tremendous culture. So being the opposite of reactionary, having a thoughtful vision is one of the key aspects of being indispensable, not only to who you report to, but who you work with.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's so, honestly, I feel like, right, there's no mistakes. Like there was a reason why you and I were meant to have this conversation today. My experience was similar with my team member where she left and I was the only person, there was no HR department. And she was very honest. She was like, it's hard to work with you, pretty similar situation. And I felt horrible. I'm sure you did, as you shared with us as well. It's like hard to wrap your head around that you could make someone feel this way because we think in our perception that everyone sees the world the way we see it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm just amazed by your story and how you've been able to change things around. Also, knowing the in depth side of the beauty industry and how challenging that culture is to redevelop just because of the nature of the business itself, unfortunately, that's a miraculous retention rate for people in that industry.
I have to say the healthcare industry, this was pre-COVID, by the way, too. The healthcare industry is, I kind of parlay it similar to teachers. It's such an important job to have nurses and doctors and NPs and PAs. But a lot of times it's a thankless job, and there's a lot of mental kind of hardship that goes with it. So shout out to anyone that's in the healthcare industry, because really it's not easy to get up and have the right mindset and do the right thing day in and day out, and so many people still do.
Yeah, every day. Oh my gosh, totally. I've worked with a lot of people transitioning out of that industry. I'm sure you have as well. And just sending them all so much love and light and good vibes for whatever length and amount of time that you have been working in that industry.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
brutal.
yeah,
We see you and we appreciate you for sure. One of the things that I remember, this team member that I was telling you about, she actually
yeah.
came back and now she works with me. And
Oh,
it was so nice. She was like, I saw how much you've grown. And I think
a
people,
compliment.
like I had this perception that I had to wear this
Hmm.
armor and share with everyone, like, now I've been healing, right? Tell my story a million times in order for people to believe that was actually the complete opposite when I was experiencing it. Your aura changes of like how you show
Hmm.
up and you don't even need to explain to people that you've healed. They
Hmm.
just know, like especially if they've known you for a long time. Can you talk about what that dynamic was like for yourself as you were evolving, especially within the HR department?
Yeah, I fell flat on my face. Everyone knew she left because of me. And that was, you know, I mean, the ego, first of all, subconscious, consciously, that ego loves to play a strong role in your world, and you have to take big bite of humble pie to keep going. What I'm seeing a lot today is just avoidance and fear of failure. So there's no action taken at all. Sometimes failure, I would never encourage anyone to deliberately fail, but my God, it's the best teacher in the world. And if you take the lesson as a genuine gift, I know that may sound a little tacky, but otherwise it would be a disservice to you if you didn't take that lesson as a gift, or if someone didn't give you that hard feedback. How else are you supposed to grow? So I think a lot of times it's just changing your mindset and how you're viewing it instead of trying to protect yourself and avoid getting hurt or having a fear of judgment. Just take action and keep going and be resilient, because it's all these failures, and I'm similar to you, and I'm sure to so many listeners. Think of like your hardest time that you had at work, or even, in life. That's what's giving you hindsight wisdom. Hindsight wisdom is something no amount of money, or frankly, no education could give you. It's the real world experience, the real world failures. It's being humble, learning, and continuing to take action. To me, that's the best lesson that you can have, and the best resource you can have in your world is to then use that for hindsight wisdom. How it shows up for me today in terms of the dynamic, I wish to explain via a story. So my 8-year-old son, I have an 8-year-old son and a 5-year-old daughter. And they're complete opposite personalities, which most siblings are. And my daughter is just like me, genuinely pretty confident. You know, dances the beat of her own drum, knows what she likes, knows what she doesn't like, is not afraid to stand up for what's right, all the things. Sometimes that could have some watch outs, but we're rolling with it. Um, and my son is the kindest, sweetest soul. He'll never bully anyone, God willing. And I think he's going to be a phenomenal leader and husband. He's just very well-rounded. And sometimes can be a little anxious. He's more on the reserved side, so he's not as gregarious, outgoing as I am. But he also very much knows what he likes, knows what he doesn't like. And I think, so much smarter than I will ever be. He's very attuned to energy in the environment. He remembers so much. He's very good with just knowledge. He does his homework by himself, like he's just like a whiz kid. Anyhow, a few months ago, I was busy with work and I was getting this email and I needed to respond. And he said something to me and I kind of snapped at him. And he's like, Mommy, you are so mean. And I'm like, Dylan, I grew up with a Brazilian Catholic dad. Trust me, I am not mean. You don't know what mean means. He's like, you are so mean, Mommy. You're always so mean to me. And I'm sure I'm not the first or last mom to be told that from their child, but I was like a little offended by that. And I'm like, Dylan, every night I put you to bed, I say your affirmations, I tell you how great of a kid you are. Every morning I give you a long morning hug. When you come home from school, I give you a hug. I ask how your day went. And he looks at me and he's like, Mommy, that's just our routine. You're mean in between. I'm telling you, this kid is smarter. And I just paused for a moment. He stopped me in my tracks. He was right. In between, when he comes home from school and through dinner, and yeah, like sometimes I'd be annoyed. I'd be on my phone. I wouldn't give him eye contact. I'd probably have like a tone, depending on what was going on in my world, talk about still being a little reactionary. And so I said, you know what, Del, thanks for telling me that. Mommy's going to work on that. Because in the moment, I was like, dang, you're so right. This 8-year-old is like schooling me. And I thought to myself, I actually shared this with my coach. I have a tremendous coach and advisor. His name is Mark Levy. He's a differentiation expert, and he's really helped me differentiate myself in the speaking world. And he goes, that is an amazing story because that's leadership, isn't it? It's during all the in-betweens. And him and I just kept going and building on that. And I was saying, you know what, you're so right, because now I'm having all of these flashbacks of these in-between moments where, depending on the mood of who I was working with, I didn't want to get their approval for this budget item, or I wasn't going to ask them where they were in the report that was due yesterday. Or I would walk by and I would just see on their face they were in a mood or they were having a bad day and I didn't want to mess with them. Those little tiny micro moments, in my opinion, is what leadership is. It's outside of the formal one-on-ones that you typically prepare for because you have an agenda and you have continuity on it. It's outside of the presentations that you also prepared for and you have the deck and you're ready to go. It's those unprepared quick little micro moments that can make or break the three sides of indispensability: the trust, respect, and being dependable. And so to me, it's about being hyper aware of all the little in between moments, because that's what people are going to remember. They're going to remember how they felt being shamed when you had a condescending tone to them. You didn't mean to, most likely. And it's the in between moments that I really firmly believe makes or breaks being that indispensable leader.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I am obsessed with you and your son. Like this is
I'm upset. He's the sweetest. I actually, a quick sidebar of last, like a few weeks ago, I said, Dylan, this was like a few months, right? I was like working my in between. I was like, Dale, remember when you told mommy that I was mean and I've been really working on it. Am I doing better? And he's like, yeah, mommy, you've been doing a lot better. I was like,
the best. Yeah.
winning at life. But, it's something now I share with so many people because it's these little quick date. We're also busy. We're so busy. We're doing a million things at once, especially moms,
Yeah.
caretakers, what have you, that we don't stop to pay attention to the little tiny things that make a huge, huge difference.
It's so relatable, that story as well. Like I unfortunately don't have kids yet, hopefully someday, but I am a dog mom. And I have to look at her throughout the day and be like, oh my gosh, if I ignored you all day, like she doesn't have a voice. And I
No.
just love that he stepped up and shared that with you.
Yeah.
It's so much about his character and person
Mhm.
that you've raised as well. And his integrity. He spoke his
Mhm.
truth. And look at how it's changed. I'm sure your life and now like your speaking career. And
Mhm.
you don't know how these ripple effects will affect other people down the line, but that's why we should do it. That's why we should make an impact or make the change or become hyper aware of the way we're speaking to people or even just like engaging with them. I've
Mhm.
noticed in my in betweens, I can also tune out. And sometimes it's to my benefit because I'm finishing a project. But at the same time, what am I missing out on? Like what if people need me during that time and I'm so focused, I can't adapt? Adaptability has been a big thing for me. I'm seeing a lot of what you're describing right now in a lot of my clients as well.
Mhm.
Love
Mhm.
them. All of them also listen to the show for the most part. And they know, like they're aware of what's happening and it's all a part of the process. So I also just want to say for listeners and for you, give yourself grace. We're all on
Mhm.
the journey.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I think that's a good point about adaptability, because in my opinion, one of the things that is also a foundational trait to leadership or just honestly being a human is self-awareness. And I feel like you're never at a finish line with self-awareness. You're always adapting as your world changes. You either become a mom or a dog mom, or you go from that really difficult, transition of being an individual contributor to now a supervisor or a manager. And then your self-awareness will always alter and change and hopefully parlay into strong social awareness. But I think being adaptable is actually a really hard trait. Most humans don't like change, and they're very resistant to change. Again, it goes back to that fear, of the unknown. and also the avoidance of being hurt or being uncomfortable. But being able to adapt, in my opinion, is confidence.
Yeah.
Confidence is knowing that whatever challenge comes your way, you're going to handle it. You're going to figure it out. I used to tell my team all the time, FIOJDI, figure it out, just do it. Because if you're stuck in inaction, you're screwed. You're not learning and you're also screwing over the other team members. So just keep adapting. I mean, during COVID, the amount of times that me and my team members sent the Ross Geller pivot uh, GIF over, just pivot and keep going. But I think that a lot of times we get, again, goes back to being stuck in our heads. Some
Yeah.
of us have higher anxiety levels than others, which could be another challenge. But if you just keep taking action to adapt, it's going to make you a better person. And then you're almost training your brain that like adaptability is just part of life.
Yeah, like it can become a part of your personality. I think a lot of us have this vision of what our identity is, and we don't look outside of that. But I know in my experience, like I really am a much different person. My core values are the same, but
Mm-hmm.
I am a different person in the way I show up, like in my life. And it's impacted, like I mentioned, every area of my life. That's why I love that you shared your story with your family. It's so much more than just our work. And
Mm-hmm.
even though we might start the journey for that purpose, it ends up, at least in my experience, having a ripple effect, like
Mm-hmm.
literally everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say to the people that are maybe listening to this that do have someone in their work life that is reactionary and they maybe don't know how to have a conversation or reflect back to that person? Like, this is how you're making me feel. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because in
Mm-hmm.
my experience, when that's happened, I've ran away. Like you said, maybe not go into the room, maybe not have that conversation, or I have left jobs, where
Mm-hmm.
I felt uncomfortable before. And sometimes I
Mm-hmm.
wish I would have given it a little bit more time or maybe more feedback to that potential person that I was working with.
Mm-hmm. I love that you asked me this question because a lot of times people don't, everything boils down to communication, all wins and losses. But I sort of hate saying that because I feel like communication is such a broad term. And almost every engagement survey that I've ever taken or heard of, it all boils down to communication. But what exactly does that mean? There's so much underneath it. There's tone, there's transparency, there's words, there's over communicating, under communicating. Here's a good formula that I use. I train a lot of my teams and coachees on how to have what I call a kindly honest conversation. You may call it a crucial conversation or a difficult conversation, but how to have that conversation that feels so uncomfortable, but is so needed.
Yeah.
Um, First and foremost, you want to think of timing. You don't want to call them out, in front of other people. I always think one and one. You want to do a one-on-one and try your best to have this conversation within one business day. Otherwise, what's going to happen is, as we all know, we avoid it, we put it off to the side, and it festers. It keeps us up at night and it starts building what I call this like negative nucleus inside of your body that gets bigger and bigger and is not good for stress. So one and one, try to have a one-on-one conversation with that individual. If it's really escalated and difficult, you may need to go to a mediation part, but let's not go there. That's like 301.
Okay.
One-on-one, and then within one business day, ideally. Of course, during an appropriate or downtime, which leads me to part two, is start with a permission-driven question to begin the conversation. So a permission-driven question psychologically allows the end user, the recipient, to feel like they gave you permission to proceed. So now they have buy-in, they feel this level of partnership. The power play is equal because they gave you permission. Um, and they're giving you a green light to proceed. what that's going to do emotionally is put them less on the defense
Okay.
because you gave them that step to proceed. Most people just go right into the conversation.
Yeah. Okay.
But start with a permission-driven question, which can look like, hey, I kind of want to share with you some feedback on our last few one-on-ones. Is it all right if we talk about that around 4 o'clock before I head out for the day? Or is this a good time for me to share a few thoughts with you? Or it could be, is it all right if I give you some feedback? Or is it okay if I share a different point of view? Any sort of question that has the recipient, aka end user, say yes before you then dive into the nitty-gritty, psychologically, they're going to be less defensive because your number one goal in any conversation is to reduce defensiveness. Because we all know what happens when someone gets defensive and they feel some type of way about what you're saying to them. Forget it. It's over. They're seeing red and they're listening to respond versus listening to hear.
Yeah.
So step 2 is a permission-driven question to ease into the heart of the conversation. And then step 3, I always recommend starting with your intention and goal. Human beings, the way that we are wired, if we have a black hole of information, we are hardwired to fill that in with worst case scenario. So that D-bag that cut me off on the road yesterday, he's a horrible person. Maybe not. I have no idea. He may be going to a doctor's appointment that he's nervous about, or he has a sick infant in the car. I'm assuming it's a he. That's so bad of me. But
No, it's fine.
we want to
Perfect.
beat someone to the chase of assuming the worst. So
Okay.
how can we beat them to the chase? Saying what our actual intention is and what our goal is, why we're talking to them. So
Mm.
instead, and it doesn't need to be formal, like, Caitlin, I'm having this conversation with you, and my intention, it doesn't need to be like that. In fact, if you're really nervous about it, think of your worst fear of what they think the conversation is going to be about and beat them to the chase to tell them that's not what it's going to be about. So you can say it in the negative sense too, flip the negative sense, excuse me. So it could be something, this is the easy way out, not easy way out, sorry. This may be an easier lower hanging fruit way to approach it is, hey, you're not in trouble. I'm not upset. Whatever you think that they're going to feel as like worst case scenario, beat them to the chase and just scratch that off the list by saying, hey, this is not, I don't mean to be, I don't want to be confrontational at all. My intention is to just kind of share my point of view so that we can collaborate in a more productive way going forward.
Love
So
that.
right there, I just said my intention and goal. This way, again, you're putting them even less on the defense. You're what I call setting the table of what you're trying to say. And that's within your control. What's not within your control is how they were going to react. But within your control is you could do your best to get the best reaction.
Yeah. Love
So
that.
intention and goal, in my opinion, is such an easy thing to start a conversation with, but many times we don't prep for the conversation. We're not thoughtful about how our information is going to land. So we just go straight into it, and a lot of times people say, I'm just being honest, or this is just how I am, or this is how I talk. No, human energy will always persist. So playing the professional game in a professional way means that you have to have those hard conversations, but you can actually do that in a kindly, honest manner with those 3 steps.
So good because it kind of, like you said, it sets the tone, sets the table so that then you both can walk away, hopefully feeling good. At least, out of your reaction, you can react in the best way. Then you're already like 50% there,
Yes.
versus like we were talking about in the beginning, walking away feeling like crap or just not having the same emotional outcome.
Yeah.
One thing that I've realized in business is that emotions really drive people. Like that's what drives the psychology of even a productive business at the end of the day. And if we aren't becoming aware of how we're setting the tone around sensitive conversations, it can totally spiral out of control,
Mhm.
unfortunately. And it's like not always the person's fault, either person's fault. It's just a big pile of emotional baggage that's just been plopped on the table instead of like having a neutral conversation. It's really all we
Mhm.
want at the end of the day is productivity, especially as CEOs, you know?
Mhm. And as a general team member, like life is hard.
Yeah.
Life is really hard. Everyone's life is like an iceberg. We only see the surface. We have no idea what's lying underneath.
Yeah.
And why not make our lives easier and make our team members' lives easier? And to do that, instead of being reactionary, again, going back to that initial theme that we brought up, just being proactive, being thoughtful, being aware how you're coming off. And hey, you did your best. It didn't land well. Great news. You're going to learn from that. And then you keep going. But I think that a lot of times we're just so busy and we're in our own heads dealing with our own stuff.
Yeah.
We're not thinking about the greater good and the big picture. Um, Approaching people with these kindly, honest conversations, being mindful of how we are interacting during all the little in-between moments, and actually learning from our failures. That's what makes someone indispensable as a leader, as an influencer in the workplace, as a human. That's what's going to make someone think like, wow, I worked with Caitlin 5 years ago and I loved working with her. Or I see Caitlin in this meeting and I'm excited because I always learn something from her. I just love the way she shows up and I could always like pick up a nugget from her. That's the kind of indispensable leadership mindset that you want to carry, where your shadow is so positive that it elevates others.
It's like so beautiful. This conversation has brought me so many ideas, thoughts. I'm like, I love how you perfectly just packaged everything that we talked about today, too. Can you tell us how our listeners can get in touch with you, work with you, come see you speak, all the good things?
Yes, I would love for the listeners to come follow me on Instagram, Ana Welsh Leadership, ANAWELSH Leadership. I post a lot of what I'm doing. I post events and networking events that I'm going to. I post little nuggets and tidbits. So please follow me on Instagram, Ana Welsh Leadership. You can also follow me on LinkedIn. I post almost just as much there as well. I have over 60 testimonials on my LinkedIn from clients and audience members from my talks. And that's Ana Welsh, ANAWELSH. And you can message me on either platforms to talk about ways that I can support you. Key ways that I deliver my services is obviously speaking or workshops. So I love to do keynote speaking engagements. I am not the girl that talks at the audience. I talk with the audience. My X factor is I weave the audience into my talks. So I'm very, very interactive and engaging. So please know that. Workshop, same thing. Second way is I do a lot of consulting and fractional chief culture officer work. My bread and butter on that platform, in that world, is bringing core values to life, understanding the workplace dynamics and where the opportunities to fix the human, the team issues. And then the third way is I do leadership coaching for individuals as well. So again, come find me on LinkedIn or Instagram. Message me. Happy to have a complimentary curiosity call with you and see if and how I might be able to support you.
Love it. And for our multitasking listeners, all the links are in the show notes below. Message me. I'll connect you with Ana as well. If you cannot find her, I will help. And yeah, definitely follow her. Her content's amazing. I love everything that you're posting. Thank you so much again for being here. This was such a productive and positive conversation.
I have to say, I was really tired today. I stayed up super late last night doing a presentation, and this just energized me. So thank you.
Oh, I'm so glad. You would never know it. You showed up
Okay, good.
perfectly. So thank you so much again.
My pleasure.